Hello students, welcome to StudyIQ. So we will continue our discussion on economy. We are in the module International Organization, a very lengthy module because very important from prelims and mains. Okay, so we have taken 12 sessions, and if you see WTO we started off with, and WTO we have taken 8 sessions, and then we have talked about World Bank, okay, and World Bank Group, so 2 sessions, and then we have talked about IMF and IMF reforms, further 2 sessions. So 12 sessions are already over in this particular module, and it is complete in itself. WTO, if you see, we started off with GATT. That is, we have discussed about 1947, 23 countries met in Geneva and they signed an agreement, that is a general agreement on tariffs and trade, and it was operational from 1948. And we have discussed various rounds of GATT, and the 8th round introduced few new issues, and the round got stuck and it went for 8 years. And in 1994, the Dangal draft or the Marrakesh agreement and the draft final act, anything can be said, okay, all are same, and that led to the establishment of WTO in 1995. Then we have talked about various ministerial conferences of WTO. We have talked about Doha Ministerial Conference, we have talked about Bali Ministerial Conference, we have discussed about Nairobi Ministerial Conference, we have talked about Singapore issues. All these we have done in detail. We haven't left anything for chances. We have talked about all WTO agreements, like agreement on agriculture, TRIPS, okay, then TRIMS we have discussed, all these NAMA, non-agriculture market access, all these things we have discussed, okay. Then after that we have talked about World Bank groups, the 5 organizations we have discussed. Then we have discussed about IMF reforms, the reforms in 2015, what was actually the demands of developing countries we have seen. And if you haven't seen those videos, please watch that videos, then your international organizations will be complete, okay. So you can get all those videos here. That's my Telegram channel, or that's my Instagram ID. So you can get in touch with me here. This is my Telegram channel, Zia, Safir. All the economy videos are there. I think I've done around 250 to 300. That much videos I've done. Close to 20 modules are there. I think I've completed around 12 modules over there in YouTube, okay. Otherwise, if you need to attend the regular classes or any help or mentorship or guidance related to civil service examination, you can get in touch with me over there, or I'll give you my contact number also. If you need to attend the classes, this is my number, 892-697. So if you need to write the test or any class, if you're following my classes, you can get in touch with me here, okay. So today we are going to talk about BRICS, okay. I will also do this comparison, the New Development Bank. Most of the students have this confusion: when New Development Bank is there, then why this AIIB was established by China? What is the need for this, okay? And the difference can be asked in prelims, and in mains also you should be knowing the difference, so you can write very good answers, and there is a high possibility that the question can be asked by comparing this, okay. So New Development Bank and Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, what is the difference? I'll also talk about Asian Development Bank, okay. So all ADB. So let's get started with BRICS, okay. So it was conceived in 2001 by whom? Jim O'Neill, Jim O-N-E-I-L of Goldman Sachs, okay. So Jim O'Neill of Goldman Sachs, in a research paper titled "The World Need Better Economic BRICS, okay. So this idea is actually conceived by Jim O'Neill of Goldman Sachs in his research titled "The World Need Better Economic BRICS," okay. And the foreign ministers of this BRICS nations actually met in 2006, and the decision has been taken that a bloc or a group will be formed, and this decision was taken at Yekaterinburg, Russia, okay. Yekaterinburg, Russia. So actually BRICS came into existence. So 2006 the foreign ministers of these countries met, and the decision has been taken in Yekaterinburg, Russia. So what you need to do is you need to see the important summits, okay. I'm not discussing the summits here because all these current summit is more important for you, and from the perspective of the constant part, I can talk about the first one actually in Yekaterinburg, Russia, 2009, okay. Second one, Brasilia, okay. Brasilia in 2010. So why this session is important is because decision taken to invite South Africa. Here in this session only this BRIC became BRICS. Okay, so South Africa included in the block in December 2010. So December 2010 South Africa included and BRIC became BRICS. So in Brasilia, this session in 2010, that the decision have been taken that they will be inviting South Africa also to the BRICS, so that the African representation will also be there. Okay, so Brazil is there, Russia is there, China is there, India is there. So then you can have the contribution or the participation from the African nation also, and South Africa is also a developing country or the emerging economy rather than a developing country, emerging economy. Okay, so in that context in 2010 it became BRICS. Now the summits, you can see the current summits, and I don't want to discuss that as already in StudyIQ itself all the current summits videos are available, so you need to watch that and you can write down the important points related to that. Okay, so I'll move on to the objectives and I'll talk about the new development bank more in detail, and my objective is basically to talk about the static part. So I'm not much more concentrated or interested in discussing the current affairs part. So this video will be kept for the constant part, and whatever updation that you need to do, you have to do, and you have to refer to the current affair teachers. Okay, so the Ankit is taking, Joyce is taking, so you can watch those videos and you can fill this up so that I can save the time. That's the idea. Okay, now one thing is actually it does not have a headquarter, it does not have a permanent headquarter. Okay, so no permanent headquarter, no secretariat. In which country the summit is held, that will act as the headquarter normally. So if it is in Brasilia, that will act as the headquarter or the secretariat that year, like that. Okay, so there is no permanent headquarter or secretariat. When we discussed about World Bank, IMF, I have told you the headquarter is in Washington DC, like that we can't say here. Not a very important point, just I am telling you as piece of knowledge. Okay, so actually there is no headquarter or secretariat, and it will be provided by the host country where the summit is held, and it will be on a cyclical basis. So this year India, next year China, then Brazil, then Russia, then South Africa, and it will repeat. Okay, so it will be on a cyclical basis. The headquarter or the secretariat will also change based on the summit or based on the host country. The host country have to provide it. Okay, now we'll see the contribution of BRICS. That's more important, more interesting. So if you see BRICS contribution in terms of landmass, if you see 26% of landmass, almost half of the population. So you can see this is almost 1/4 of the landmass, then 42% of population. So this is actually close to 1/2, right? Half of the population, and then 23% of world GDP. 23% of world GDP that we are taking at market exchange rate. When we are taking at market exchange rate 23%, if you take it at purchasing power parity, it will be much more. Okay, so world GDP, so this is close to 1/4, right? 1/4 of world GDP, 1/4 of world landmass, 1/2 of the population, and I've told you world GDP, if you take at purchasing power parity, it will come around 30-32, that range. 30% world GDP in terms of purchasing power parity. In terms of purchasing power parity, I hope you know the difference between market price and purchasing power parity. Both are exchange rates. I have already done the video on purchasing power parity. One entire video was discussed in detail about purchasing power parity. It is nothing. For example, if you spend $1 in US, how much items you can buy in US, okay, and to get the same items in India, how much rupee you need to spend. And $1, if you see market exchange rate, it's 75 now. But $1 purchasing power exchange rate is 18. What does this mean? You spend $1 in US, what you can buy there, exactly the same item. We take only standard items. To buy here, you need to pay 18 rupees. For example, the 200 ml Coca-Cola, right, or the Pepsi, you need to buy in US. It will cost $1. So here that will cost 18 to 20. So it will not cost 75. But when you see dollar and rupee market exchange rate, it is 75. So don't think that the Pepsi, see, it's the same commodity. So when we talk about purchasing power parity, you will actually understand the real worth of dollar. But market rate of dollar is so high because dollar is a hard currency and people always keep on demanding dollar. When the demand for dollar is high, the price of dollar in terms of rupee will go high. That's what we call as rupee depreciation and dollar appreciation. So that is what actually happening. That is because of demand for dollar. But that does not show the real worth of dollar. If you need to know the real worth of dollar, it is actually the purchasing power parity. What you can buy in US with $1 to buy the same item, like for one Pepsi there you need to pay $1. Here one Pepsi you need to pay not 75, you need to pay 20 rupee. Or one McD burger in US you need to pay $2, here you need to pay 40 rupee. So 40 divided by 2, there $2, here 40 rupees. So 40 divided by 2, 20. That is a purchasing power rate. Okay. So the real worth of dollar is actually 18 rupee only. That's what purchasing power parity. And that's why when you calculate at purchasing power parity, the GDP will be more. And that's why when we calculate GDP at purchasing power parity, we are the third largest economy. But when it comes to market rate, we will be coming in 7, 8, 9, that position. Okay, so purchasing power we are the third largest, and purchasing power China is the first largest economy or the largest economy. Otherwise, if it is market exchange rate, it is US. Okay. So then 50% of world's forex and gold reserve. 50% of world's forex. Why forex is so high? Because of China. China is having huge forex. Why gold is so high? Because of South Africa. Their gold reserve is so high. So if you see this is the import. Now itself, I hope you understood the importance of BRICS, right? 26%, 1/4 of land mass, 1/2 of population, 1/4 of GDP, or if it is 30%, 1/4 if you take at market exchange, it is 30%, or 1/3 when it comes to purchasing power, and 50% of forex and gold reserve. Okay. So relevance of BRICS for India. Now these all are from mains point of view. I'll give you few important points so you can exactly write the same. Relevance of BRICS for India. So it actually increased India's say in international organizations like G20, WTO, etc. Okay. So increased India's say or voice in G20, IMF, World Bank, WTO, etc. G20, WTO, World Bank, IMF, etc. Okay. So second, these 5 members, if you see, the concerns mostly are common concerns because all are emerging economy. So their concerns are common. So common concern. Okay. So all are emerging economies. Okay. Now it has enhanced the strategic significance of India. So increased strategic significance of India. Okay. It has reduced dependence on IMF and World Bank, decreased dependence on IMF and World Bank. See, there is a contingent reserve fund. Especially this dependence on IMF and World Bank was reduced after New Development Bank and Contingent Reserve Fund, CRF. Okay, so I'll talk about CRA, Contingent Reserve Agreement. CRA and NDB, this is what we need to discuss. So in this session, basically what I want to talk about what I want to talk about is actually NDB, and I'll compare it with AIIB and ADB. This is the prime importance of the session. Forget about what all things I have discussed. Anyway, I'm not discussing the summits as it is part of current affair, and I'm only dealing with the static part. Okay, so I'm telling you again, I'm only dealing with the static part so that this video will be useful for all the time for all the students. I may not be doing the videos in future, so that's why we are confined to that. Okay, but there are other teachers who's taking care of the current affairs in StudyIQ. So here, contingent reserve agreement I will discuss now. See, in case of balance of payment, we are depending on whom? We are depending on IMF, right? And in 91, we got help from IMF, but it was a conditional credit. Okay, when we borrow from IMF, there are a lot of conditions which are attached. And if you see, these conditions are for whom? These conditions are not there for developed countries. The conditions are mainly for developing countries. Why these conditions are imposed? because of the borrowing limits, right? See, borrowing depends on what? I have told you when we discussed about IMF, borrowing depends on quota. So whatever quota you have in IMF, into 6 times, or 6 times you can actually borrow. So if you borrow within this limit, this is the borrowing limit, quota 6 times of the quota. So if you borrow within the limits, then there is no condition. But if you borrow beyond the limit, there will be condition. Now what is the problem with the developing country? Developing country problem is their quota is less. Because the quota is based on what? The quota is based on share in world GDP and share in world trade. So developing countries, the quota is less. So when you talk about 6 times, that means the borrowing limit, it is very low compared to developed countries. Developed countries, the quota is huge. For example, World Bank, the share of US is 17%. Okay, so quota of developed countries is so huge. So what is the borrowing limit for them? 6 times that huge. That means it's so huge. So whenever they borrow, it will definitely come within the limits only. So there is no condition. But whenever a developing country borrow, it will go beyond the limit as the quota is less. So it all connected to quota. I hope you understood, you are able to connect it. So why only conditions are attached to the developing countries? It is because of quota. Borrowing is depending on the quota. 6 times the quota is what you are borrowing. In case of developed countries, the quota is high, so the borrowing limit is so high. So when they borrow, even when they borrow more than what India borrowed or developing country borrowed, still it comes within the limit, so there is no condition. You may think that they borrowed more than what India borrowed, but still there is no condition. The reason is this: they are borrowing so high than the developing country, but it comes within the limit because the quota is large. And you can borrow up to 6 times the quota. But the developing countries, since the quota is small, when the 6 times is also small, so when they borrow in case of balance of payment situation, it will be beyond the limit. So you have to follow the conditions, and that is what Washington Consensus, etc. We have already covered that in detail. The 91 reforms we have discussed in industry, and some planning also have discussed that. And then we have opened up our economy. We went for current account convertibility. Okay, and we are moving towards full convertibility, moving towards close to full convertibility, that is fuller convertibility, and we have changed our exchange rate system to fixed to floating. Okay, so all these are part of the conditions which are imposed by IMF. But what I'm saying is, now India's dependence on IMF decreased. Now that much conditions will not be there. This contingent reserve agreement is basically to help the member countries in the balance of payment crisis. So if again we are facing the crisis, we can borrow directly from NDB, or this, as per this arrangement, we can get the money. No need to depend on IMF. If you depend on IMF, further conditions will be there, and you don't want to depend any more on IMF or the developed countries. Okay, so you have your own reserve arrangement agreement, and then you can borrow from that. I hope you understood. So let me write down here what is this can be a prelims question also. So contingent reserve arrangement. So it provides finance to member countries to overcome BOP crisis. So it provides finance to member countries to overcome BOP crisis. Okay, so what is the capital? Capital is 100 billion. So capital 100 billion. Now you need to know the contribution of India, China, South Africa and Brazil, Russia also. So what do you think, who do you think will be the maximum contribution? Obviously China. How much? 41%. India and Brazil and Russia, all the three have the same contribution. So India, Brazil and Russia, 18%. Okay, so all the three having same contribution, 18%. So how much is over? 18 into 3, that is 54. 54 and 41, 95 is over. So what is left out? That is for South Africa. That is 5%. So South Africa 5%. So India, Brazil, Russia. It is easy to remember. China maximum 45 and 41. Sorry, 41 and South Africa 5%. Then balance is how much? 54, right? That 54 is divided among the three. That means 18, 18, 18. So easy to remember. In case if a prelims question is asked, I don't think you will face any problem with respect to this part. Okay, now we will move to the most important part of this discussion. So here I will be comparing the New Development Bank and Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. Okay, so NDB, okay, AIIB, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. Okay, and that's enough. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll take AIIB also, Asian Development Bank also. Last year that was actually asked as a question. So if you would have attended this class before that exam, you would have got this answers just like that. It is so simple. You attend the session and you just go and see the question. You will definitely answer this question. And I'm not framing this lecture after seeing that question. It was actually, even last year also I used to take it in the same way. The same content only I used to teach in the last year, and 2011 onwards when I start teaching, I keep the same content. Okay, so that's why I'm not even updating the current affair also. I've updated here, but I'm not discussing it here because this video will go for long, no? So if I'm talking about this last meeting, when it is watched in the next year, it will not be current, right? So that's why I'm not talking about the current. Okay, so let's see from establishment. Established in, I'll talk about AIIB also, Asian Development Bank. So established in 2015, okay, and this is 2016. So this is actually the question. When new development bank is there by BRICS, then why China is concerned about this AIIB? So this is actually a mains question. Okay, we will also talk about this AIIB, which was an old one, that is 1966, Asian Development Bank. Now what is the headquarter? Where is the headquarter? Shanghai. Okay, so Shanghai is the main headquarter, but there is a regional office in Johannesburg. Okay, so in South Africa. So Shanghai in China, the headquarter, then regional office in Johannesburg. AIIB, Beijing, and AIIB, Manila. Okay, Manila. Then members, is it only BRICS nations in NDB? Not only BRICS nation. Membership is open to all. Any member of UN can be a member. So mainly BRICS. Okay, so membership is actually open to all. Any members of UN. Okay, but there is a condition. BRICS share should be at least 45%. BRICS share should be minimum 45%. This has to be maintained. Now how many members here when it comes to AIIB? 57 members. This is actually led by China, 57 members. And what about membership? It is open to all. So here also open to all. It is not only for, that's what you need to understand, not only for BRICS members. Although BRICS countries established, this is not only for BRICS members. Membership is open to all. Any UN member. Okay, so here also open to all. What about here? How many members are there? 67 members are in AIIB. So how many from Asia? 48 from Asia and 19 from rest of the world. Okay, so one thing that you need to know here is here US is the second largest. USA is the second largest shareholder. Okay, so membership again is open to members of Economic and Social Council for Asia Pacific. UN Economic and Social Council for Asia Pacific. Okay, UN Economic and Social Council for Asia Pacific. Okay, so open to all. So here open to all, in NDB open to all, in AIIB open to all, but in case of AIIB, if you see, open to the members of UN Economic Social Council. Okay, UN Economic and Social Council for Asia and Pacific, and developed countries. Okay, so UN Economic and Social Council for Asia and Pacific plus developed countries, the membership. Okay, so that's about the membership. And then what about the share capital? Okay, or so if you see here, in case of BRICS, that means NDB, the authorized share capital is $100 billion. Okay, but the subscribed capital is less. Subscribed capital is 50 billion. Subscribed capital $50 billion. Okay, Now, what about the contribution? See, in case of CRA, I've told you China 41, South Africa 5, and other countries 18. But here, equal contribution from all countries. Okay. And what about the voting? Voting also here equal. It is not on the basis of share. It is everybody having one vote. Okay, in case of NDB, but in others you will see on the basis of share. So obviously in AIIB, China's share is more, China will have more vote. So here contribution, equal contribution. Okay, so one vote each. Okay, and there is no veto. No country have veto in NDB, and decision on the basis of consensus. Decision on the basis of consensus. So these are the points that you need to know. One vote each, no veto to any member, decisions on the basis of consensus, and equal contribution by all members, and the subscribed capital is $50 billion. What about this one? What about AIIB? So the largest share capital is actually China 30.34%. Okay, second largest is India 8.52%, Russia third, 6.68%. So here vote is based on the share. Vote based on share. That's the main difference between NDB and AIIB. There it was everybody is having equal vote, there is no veto vote. Here everybody is not having equal vote, it is based on share. So who will have more vote? China's voting is China 26.06% voting. Okay, India 7.5. So China is the first largest, and India is the second. Okay, in terms of voting. Now when it comes to ADB, the shares, if you see, I'll write here the shares. Japan having the maximum 15.7%. USA second largest, I have already told you, only 0.1 less, so 15.6. And then third is third is China 6.5. So first Japan, second US, third China, fourth India, again only 0.1 less, so India 6.4. So first Japan, US is 0.1 less, then third China, India is 0.1 less to China. Oh, these are the four largest shareholders in ADB, and votes are on the basis of share again. Okay, so who will get maximum vote? Japan will get maximum vote, then US, China, like that it will go. So here vote on the basis of share. Now what is the source of fund? Source of fund, if you talk about source of fund, in case of WTO, I have told, in case of World Bank, I have told you subscribed capital and then issue of bonds. Okay, here also it is the same. In case of IMF, we have told you quota and borrowing, right? So in case of World Bank, I have told you subscribed capital and the issue of bonds. So here also subscribed capital. In case of NDB, subscribed capital, and issue of bonds. So they issue bonds in the international financial markets, and financial institutions can purchase the bonds. Okay, then AIIB same, here also ADB also same, subscribe share capital and issue of bonds, or issue bonds. Now how about lending? Lend to whom? That is also important, right? Lending on infrastructure and sustainable development projects in Asia and other developing countries. So here on infrastructure and sustainable development projects in Asia and other developing countries. So not only confined to BRICS nations here. So infrastructure and sustainable development projects in Asia and other developing countries. Understand the words that I'm using here. And then what about AIIB? It lent to infrastructure and other development or productive projects in Asia Pacific region. Okay, so here in Asia Pacific region, developmental projects, here Asia and other developing countries. So here Asia Pacific region. What about AIIB? It lends to infrastructure and developmental projects relating to environment, education, etc. So here mainly Asia Pacific, like here Asia Pacific, no, so Asia Pacific and developing countries of other regions also. So in Asia, here Asia Pacific plus developing countries of other region. Here you can see Asia Pacific. Here you can see Asia and developing countries of other regions. Okay, so that's about the difference, and I hope you understood the difference. Very important, the NDB, AIIB and ADB. Okay, now why this AIIB? In case if you get a mains question, you should have some content to write. I'll give you a few points. So objectives of AIIB. Okay, so basically it is a Silk Route policy of China. Silk Route policy of China. So to support that, China can use this. Okay, secondly, to increase economic or political strategic interest in Asia. To increase political, economic and strategic interest in Asia. Okay, thirdly, huge forex in China could be utilized. Okay, so huge forex reserve of China could be invested. Okay, then also to reduce the dependence on World Bank and Asian Development Bank, okay, which are actually controlled by the developed countries. So to reduce dependence on World Bank and Asian Development Bank, which are controlled by developed countries. Okay, and then to popularize the use of yuan, Chinese currency. To popularize use of yuan. Okay, see, there was an Asian Development Bank study. In that study, the conclusion was, or the idea was, Asia actually require $800 billion per year for infrastructure. And ADB is lending about how much? $10 billion per year. So how much is required? 800 billion is required, but ADB could lend this much only. So this is required. Okay, in a way it is required and more beneficial to China for China's various projects and other things, but China's forex could be utilized. But apart from that, developing countries also have advantages. Okay, so whatever you understood, you can put it in a better perspective in your paper. So I hope you understood what all things we have discussed. We have completed with this international organization. If you have any doubt related to your civil service preparation, please get in touch with me here. That's my Instagram ID, Zia Safir. You will get all my classes in the Telegram channel, the same ID, or if you need to get in touch with me in Facebook, that's my ID. Okay, so this is my contact number, 9790 892 697. After the prelims, if you need to write the mains, test series, ethics, or any help if you need, you can get in touch with me. So see you guys. Thank you.